Picture this, you're on the DC Metro just trying to get somewhere on 4th of July. Outside, the city is celebrating America turning 250 by an administration you're acutely aware emboldens racists, supports white nationalism, and celebrates hate. The doors open and you're surrounded. A wall of masked white men floods the car. Navy shirts, khaki pants, tan caps, Confederate flags. Well, for a black woman photographed in that exact car today, it wasn't theoretical, it wasn't a headline, it was her body boxed in by men who believes the country isn't hers to occupy. This image, a black rider cornered in public transit by mass extremists, is extremely representative of the nation and is a microcosm for Trump's administration. The men on that train belong to the Patriot Front, the group born out of the wreckage of Charlottesville Unite the Right rally back in 2017 when Trump said they were very fine people on both sides. After that rally's backlash, the group's founder, Thomas Rousseau, understood that he couldn't use a swastika. That's too outright, that's too in your face. So the symbols changed and they started using the Betsy Ross flags, the red, white, and blue shields, the language of lineage and birthright. What didn't change was the goal, a white ethno state built on the exclusion of black, Latino, and immigrant Americans. Why do they feel safe enough to march unmasked confidently into a federal holiday chanting "Reclaim America" blocks from Union Station? Because extremism doesn't grow in isolation, these sentiments have been permitted from the top down. When political rhetoric at the highest level flirts with the Great Replacement theory, casts immigrants as invaders, and treats multiracial society as a problem to be solved, the rhetoric doesn't stay abstract. White nationalists don't hear policy, they hear that, oh, what we believe is a green light for us to enact this in real life outright.
They fought for a nation that was proud of its heritage, that was unashamed to say that America was built by and for the descendants of the European race, that was unafraid to say that we have a culture deeply steeped in the Anglo-Saxon traditions of our forebears.
That validation is exactly why Patriot Front has grown reportedly past 540 members nationwide while perfecting a specific tactic, the flash march, sudden, choreographed, built for the camera, not for community. They don't march to persuade anyone standing in front of them. They march to manufacture footage, dominance theater for the algorithm. So when someone asks why America keeps circling back to race, the answer isn't in the textbooks. It was riding the metro through the nation's capital this weekend. For millions of Americans, race isn't a debate club topic. It's a body pressed against train doors, a face held still while men in masks film their own myth. The masks are old, the choreography is new, but the project is the same one it has always been, deciding out loud and on camera who gets to count as an American.
Where all my saltines at? Said wearing the MAGA hats. Trump got titties and he's fat. He look real tired, got bats. Dumb white shit. Dumb white shit. What kind of shit is this? Apparently these white nationalists out here in the DC streets running a motherfucking muck. This don't look like independence, this look like ignorance. I just want to say thank you, Jesus. You know, I gotta give you the glory because you knew what I needed before I did. As y'all know, I'm in New Orleans at Essence, sucking up all this black excellence with think makers, leaders, and legislators, content creators, activists, you name it, showing how black joy and our resilience is resistance. Because no matter how many times these white nationalists try to tear us down, we come together and lift each other up. Today, I'm going to be hitting these workshops with some of y'all faves. We're going to be having some open-ended conversations of what we need to do right now to stay activated, motivated, cultivated, and to come together for the betterment of our people. And after that, it's going to be even more black. So I want to thank the CBC PAC and Rolling Sea because my ass was still in damn DC. I wouldn't be free from sea to shining sea. My ass probably would have been swinging from tree to tree. And for my audience, let me say this. Don't give them the satisfaction. Today is not theirs. It's ours, okay? This is not patriotism. This is white nationalism. There is nobody that's given more to this country than the black community. We built this country. We love this country. We fought for this country, even when this country refused to love, respect, and fight for us.
Did you guys see this picture? What you're looking at is the group called Patriot Front. It is a white supremacist group that believes that anybody but white people are basically alien to this country, that only Americans can be white. It's filled with young men who wear masks like cowards. But what you're looking at here is a black woman on a DC Metro train surrounded by members of the Patriot Front. And I believe this picture will end up being a picture that really is in the history books and defines kind of this time period. Now, look, the point in this is she's not standing up and yelling. She doesn't have a protest sign. She's not telling these cowards how wrong they are. She would be completely right in doing all of that. She's simply unintimidated, at least it appears so, and existing. She's going on with her life. By her silence, by her continuing to stay there, she is calling out the cowardice of these men. And I think that's really appropriate for how it is today. Everybody's thinking through, what do I need to do? How can I fight back? What can I do? And, constantly when there are things you can do, you should. But the reality is we just have to continue to persevere through this moment. It's images like that one that are the most powerful images, more so than two people yelling at each other. It's one person seeming to refuse to be intimidated and to be moved. I think you will see this picture for a very long time, and we don't know who she is. As far as I know, as of now, she hasn't been identified or has chosen not to identify herself. But that is an example of how we as Americans persevere through a difficult moment. We simply exist. We fight where we can. We refuse to be intimidated. And at the end of the day, we will look back and see.
All morning, I've been seeing the videos of the white supremacist group walking the streets here in D.C. The group is called Patriot Front. And they're a white nationalist group, and I've seen so many people saying, oh my God, is everybody safe? I've seen people tell folks not to go outside because they're here. And I also saw someone put on threads that if it were black people, that they would have called in the National Guard. Well, here's a few fast facts for folks who have not been paying attention to what has been going on in DC. Number one, and let me just say, the only reason why anybody shouldn't be outside is because of this heat, because of the pain and the reverberation of the sound of these fighter jets flying overhead every 20 to 30 minutes. Or because outside costs too much. Because the reality is, we here in Washington, D.C. have been under a federal occupation for nearly a year. As of last week, we have 4,800 armed National Guardsmen on our streets. We have every federal agency, from the FBI to U.S. Marshal to Border Patrol, although we have no border, to DEA agent, in addition to the 40 different specific police agencies that are in D.C. Like, for example, we have a Metropolitan Police Department. We also have a police department for the Metro. We have library police. We got park police. But now everybody saw this cluster of cowards walking with their wives' bloomers on their faces in broad daylight, and everybody's supposed to be alarmed. When we were telling people months ago about a U.S. Marshal killing a black father by the name of Julian Bailey, when a Homeland Security agent shot up a black man's vehicle by the name of Philip Brown, and they lied about it in the police report until the video cam footage was released. No one made a hoopla. No one told people not to go outside. No one was so concerned about the District of Columbia. So now that you have all of that information, understand why the people in DC are not alarmed by seeing these white supremacists on the street, because we see them every day, mask on or back.
Every single American needs to hear about this, because what happened in DC is a reflection of the America we are living in right now. Today, on July 4th, hundreds of masked white supremacists marched through Washington, D.C., right near the Capitol, chanting slurs, carrying extremist symbols, and moving information like they were trying to intimidate the entire city. These men are part of a Patriot Front, a white supremacist group that's been growing louder and more coordinated. They wear identical khaki caps, navy shirts, and a white face covering to look unified, but really, they're hiding their identities because they know exactly what they stand for. They're pushing an ideology built on exclusion, and yes, they were carrying Confederate flags, a symbol of slavery, racism, rebelling against the United States, and the violent defense of white supremacy, being waved proudly on July 4th. They were also chanting about the reclamation of America. Think about that. A group of masked white supremacists marching near the Capitol, waving Confederate flags, and chanting about the reclamation of America as if this country only belongs to them. And then there's this photo, a young black woman sitting on a DC Metro train surrounded by dozens of Patriot Front members. She's the only uncovered face in the entire car, and I can't even imagine how she was feeling. But even if she was scared, that moment captures a quiet strength. That image says everything. It shows the reality of extremism in America and the quiet courage of everyday people who refuse to be intimidated. We have to acknowledge this because ignoring extremism doesn't make it disappear. It gives it room to grow. This is our America, and it's on us to make sure.
So during 4th of July weekend, a white supremacist group called Patriot Front was marching in Washington. And this random black woman minding her random black business, who just so happened to be riding the train while said white supremacists were riding the train, was photographed. And now she's even being called the new Rosa Parks just for existing while black in a photo. I don't want to get into how weird and disrespectful that is to Rosa Parks and Black people as a whole, because that should be obvious. But I do want to get into the hypervisibility, the dehumanization, and exploitation of not only Black women's physical labor, but their labor in liberation. You see, Black women have been so hyper visible in not only Black activism, but in women's liberation and also just the liberation of oppressed peoples globally. And because of that, the humanity that was barely, or in some cases not even given to them, has been stripped from them. And Black women are viewed as beasts of liberatory burden. It is a cultural expectation. It is part of the zeitgeist that just the image of a Black woman is politically provocative. She's a symbol, and the labor of her existence in America will once again be exploited, possibly for generations. And her life will now be viewed as some sort of lesson for white people. It no longer belongs to her. And Black women deserve more than just being symbols. They deserve the dignity of being humans. I hope wherever this young Black woman is, I hope she's safe. If y'all know anything, let me know.
I don't know what bothers me about this image. It's not just that you see a Black woman standing alone. It's what that picture represents. Let me be crystal clear. Racism is evil. White supremacy is evil. There is no place for either in the United States of America. For far too long, people preaching hate, division, and extremist ideology have tried to intimidate Americans into silence. But this country doesn't belong to them. It belongs to every single one of us. Our strength has never come from hate. It comes from courage, from people willing to stand their ground and refuse to be pushed aside. We fought wars to defeat fascism overseas. We sure as hell shouldn't tolerate its ideology here at home. Now that's the America that I served. And it's not the America I'll ever stop fighting for. Sappers clear the way, airborne all the way.
This is a photo taken by Reuters of the white supremacists traveling to the Capitol on the DC Metro. In the middle of the sea of white supremacists, we see a lone Black woman commuting, surrounded by a sea of people who do not think she deserves rights.
Okay, Dean, let's play a game. Which one of these ended in a tragedy? The Black woman on the train in DC, literally surrounded and outnumbered by white supremacists, or the random Ukrainian girl on a train who happened to be sitting in front of a random man?
We about to fact check this. First, if you mess with me, make sure you hit that follow button. And this month we're celebrating Disability Pride Month. Let's get it. What the hell is he talking about? First, what happened to Irina Zaruska was a tragedy. DeCarlos Brown Jr. suffered from schizophrenia and had violent behavior. In fact, it's been documented that at one point, DeCarlos told police officers that he had a man-made material in his body controlling his movements, which is why the North Carolina courts ruled that he was incompetent to stand trial. The system had multiple times to help the man, but instead he was left untreated and homeless. The system also failed Zaruska as well, because if the system did its job, then DeCarlos would have had help and Zaruska would never have been in danger. While this photo shows a Black woman surrounded by one of the most active neo-Nazi hate group in America. This group is responsible for most of the white supremacist propaganda that we have here in America. He's been accused for trying to incite riots and attacked a Black man. This photo shows a failed system, while this photo shows the type of people the system create.
This is violence. This is terrorism. These are members of Patriot Front, a documented white nationalist organization riding a DC Metro train in coordinated uniform, masked, surrounding Black and brown communities with nowhere to go. And whether this gets called terrorism depends on who holds power. Definitions of violence have always belonged to whoever controls the institutions. The historical record on this is fairly consistent. The FBI has a clinical term for what you see in these images. They call it racially or ethnically motivated violent extremism. In March 2021, the Director of National Intelligence assessed violent white supremacists as the most lethal domestic terrorism threat in the country. The Biden administration published the first national counter-extremism strategy that same year, naming white supremacist violence as the central threat. Civil rights organizations, including the ACLU and the Brennan Center, criticized that strategy for surveilling what people believed rather than persecuting what they did. Throughout Biden's 4 years, the FBI did not persecute white nationalist violence often enough to match its own threat assessment. The designation existed on paper without enforcement behind it. Under Trump's second term, the FBI's domestic terrorism operations section had been gutted, staff reassigned with officials weighing disbanding it entirely. A national database law enforcement used to identify extremist symbols was removed from the Homeland Security Digital Library. Trump designated Antifa a domestic terrorist organization by executive order and directed the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Forces to treat it as the primary national threat. That designation produced its first prison sentences in June 2026. 8 people received a combined 450 years in federal prison in the Pearland case. One defendant was not at the protest where the shooting occurred. He was arrested for transporting a box of zines he didn't write and received 30 years. His wife, who attended the protest and was not accused of firing a weapon, received 70 years. 2 other defendants received 50 years each for owning a printer and belonging to a book club. Meanwhile, every person who stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th has been pardoned. Now, this administration was elected because a majority of American voters looked at its agenda and returned it to power. When a government pardons the people who attacked the Capitol, dismantles the infrastructure built to track white nationalist violence, and sentences people to decades in prison for distributing pamphlets, those outcomes belong to the voters who chose them. This country is stating its direction clearly in court sentences and pardons, in who gets to board a train draped in bigotry and who gets sentenced to 30 years for moving a box. I'm Dr. Van, here to help you understand what counts as violence and terrorism is those with power's decision.
So I've lived in the DC area for 20, almost 30 years, 28 years, something like that. And we've never gone down to the National Mall to do fireworks. It's a lot of people, it's a lot of hassle, and it's hot out there. Obviously, I'm sure you're aware that this year it was hotter than ever. It was like a record-breaking heat. So we weren't going to be down there no matter what. But especially, I wasn't going to be down there and take part in the celebration that our president sort of hijacked and planned. It's not about not wanting to celebrate our country. It's about not wanting to support our president, and who I don't support. So, we weren't going to go down there no matter what. But I just think about being down there and witnessing, enduring hundreds of white nationalists walking down the streets, military style, faces covered, and the terror that we would have felt. So I'm grateful that we didn't go down there. There's people who are like, I don't understand it. Who are they? They've been emboldened. They feel practically invited. I'm sure they felt that they were very welcome. And it wouldn't surprise me if they weren't personally invited. That someone said, hey, why don't you guys come down and do this? Help celebrate the day. Help remind everybody what this country is really all about. So it was a sad, sad day down there. How can you possibly celebrate our wonderful country, our country that has given so many people so much, when such mindsets are walking around feeling emboldened, entitled, empowered to have their warped views on display in such a prominent way? It was a sad, 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 sad thing to see.
Did you guys see the picture that's going viral on the internet right now? It's a photo of a Black woman on public transit, and she is surrounded by masked members of Patriot Front. And then just hours later, that same group marched through the streets of Washington, D.C. So, who is Patriot Front, and why are people talking about them? Patriot Front is a white nationalist group that was founded in 2017 by a guy named Thomas Russo. And he started this group after a deadly Unite the Right rally that went on in Charlottesville, Virginia. The Unite the Right rally brought together far-right extremists, white nationalists, and neo-Nazi groups. And the Unite the Right rally ended when a man drove a car into a group of counter-protesters, and he killed one person and he injured dozens of others. And after that rally, Thomas Russo, he decided he was going to split from the white nationalist group called Vanguard America and start his own white nationalist group called Patriot Front. One of the things that he decided to do differently from other white nationalist groups is that he wasn't going to use obvious Nazi symbols. So if you look at this group, they use imagery like the American flag and other early American symbols. All of the members wear the same outfit, a hat, they cover up their face, they wear the same shirt, the same pants, and he did this because he was trying to make his white nationalist group look more mainstream. He wanted to recruit more, and basically he still promoted his same core beliefs. So this group shows up at the Capitol today, and basically their goal is they want a white America. They oppose of multiculturalism and immigration, and they actually promote the false Great Replacement conspiracy theory. And let's not forget what they do best, which is spread propaganda. So it is important that when you see this group, you must know that they are an extremist group. They are not just another political organization. Since the formation of this group, they have been involved in several high-profile situations. For example, 31 of them were arrested at an LGBTQ+ event in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. At another event in Boston, they assaulted a black man, and he was actually awarded $2.1 million in damages. This group has been widely identified as a white nationalist extremist group.